if you can't see, but a lot of empty seats. Nah. No, they can't see the empty seats here. I see the people on Zoom very punctual, so good. You know, so at SETA, you know, we have a disciplinarian. And, you know, sometimes if there's a puja, like a group prayer session, which start at 5:30 in the morning, then sometimes there's not a large attendance. And so the disciplinarian, he'll like scold. But the thing is, you know, he's scolding, but he's scolding the people who didn't show up. And so really, the ones who need to hear it, they're not there. But sometimes I'm like, why are you saying this to us? Oh, no, 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 no. No, no, no. It's not that he's using, well, not that he's using bad words. I'm like, you know. Okay, so after the lunch break, so let's just refresh the motivation, right? Why are we here? We're here to benefit others. Therefore, we need to learn the various you know, methods to free ourselves from suffering. Mm. Then as we learn more about these methods, then we can also help others do the same thing. And so we're going to participate in this lecture here. Okay. So now we were, let's review a little bit, right? So we this morning, what did we talk about? We talked about the Lam Rim genre, and then how Lam, path, Rim stages, and talked about the kind of history of the Lam Rim, the benefits of the Lam Rim, and then how the Lam Rim is basically, then we can divide the teachings into three groups or three types of practitioner, three types of person who are differentiated by their goals and therefore by the practices that they use to achieve those goals. So we went through the small scope, their main goal, good rebirth in the next life, right? And then how do they achieve that? Abandoning negative karma, which is the cause for a bad rebirth, and to accumulate positive karma, the cause for a good rebirth. All right. Then we talked about the middle capable being, their main goal, liberation from samsara. What's the cause of samsara? Well, what is samsara? We also talked about that. Samsara is the process of uncontrolled rebirth due to our karma and afflictions. So due to karma and afflictions means that's the cause of samsara. If you don't want the effect, you have to abandon the cause. Therefore, their main practice to abandon samsara is to abandon karma and afflictions. Okay. So then if you want to abandon karma and afflictions, you know, the kind of principal, you know, motivation, you need to see then the faults of samsara, right? We were saying, like Lama Tsongkhapa has said, until you generate the mind that, you know, wishes for liberation, then there's no way to pacify seeking the pleasurable effects within samsara. And craving for cyclic existence is what binds embodied beings. Therefore, at the outset, generate the mind of renunciation. Okay. then we went into the Four Noble Truths and the reason why Buddha first taught the truth of suffering to pacify this thought, thinking that samsara is like a pleasure growth. And that's why we talk about these various categories and classifications of suffering. So there's the 6 types of suffering, 8 types of suffering, and 3 types of suffering. The 6 types of suffering is what we covered right before the lunch break. And now we're on to the 8 types of suffering. Okay? So I'll review. Okay. So maybe we go to the slide on the 8 types of suffering. So here, okay. So here we have the 8 types of suffering. So the first 4, suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Now, in the Lamrim general, each of these points then has like further points to consider. So when we think of suffering of birth, then if you're born from a womb, kind of going through the birth canal, most babies when they come out, they're laughing, they're crying, probably get slapped, right? You know, and then totally helpless, can't eat by themselves. So for the first few years of life, completely dependent. Suffering of old age, then the things that, used to work well in our bodies, we start getting aches and pains. Start to, have more tiredness, forgetfulness, gray hairs, losing hairs, maybe, all this stuff. Sickness brings a lot of pain. We also get tired. And some sicknesses can lead to death, and that also brings a lot of fear. And then the suffering of death. Of course, sometimes death itself can be painful, but especially not knowing where we're going to go, that can also bring a lot of fear. We can have a lot of attachment for the people and possessions and places even. And going through that also can bring the fear and suffering. Then the suffering of encountering what is unpleasant, separation from what is pleasant, not getting what you want, right? So these, happen. Again, in samsara, since we don't control what we experience, then, anything from being caught in the rain without an umbrella to traffic jams, to, people that criticize us, to, even some of these other things, right? Getting old, getting sick, that's all unpleasant, and we can't really stop it. And then the things that are pleasant, we're also separated from those. So as it is said, every encounter ends in separation. So actually, this is in the Vinaya text, the text on discipline, saying that everyone who is born will die. All meetings end in separation. All that, attain high status will eventually fall. And all the, anything that is, how we say, collected will disperse. So that can be your wealth. It can also be like your group of friends or family. Anything that comes together eventually, won't stay together. Then the suffering of not getting what you want. So this is similar to what we talked about in the six types of suffering, right? So despite our best efforts, you know, we yeah, I used to play tennis. Yeah. It's interesting because like I was thinking about this, even in a tennis tournament, right? 64 people enter, there's only one winner, right? Only one winner. And then, these days, well, we've had uh, hmm, like the three greats, right? Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. And it's not good enough to like win Wimbledon once, but they're like all at like 19, 20 Grand Slam tournaments, right? It's many sports, right? Who's the GOAT, right? GOAT, greatest of all time, right? So it's not just you have to be number one in the world, then you just have to win tournament. No, you need to be the greatest of all time, right? The greatest who's ever played the sport. So what does that mean, right? In a tennis tournament, right? 64 people enter, only one win, right? That means actually most people, right, they're not getting what you want because there can only be one winner. And especially in this sort of day and age, there's a lot of kind of winner take all mentality, right? I think it's only accelerating, actually. Uh, sorry, more sports analogy. There's actually is a kind of joke that Jerry Seinfeld had, but he was talking about the Olympics, right? And there's this thing where, like, he's saying, like, in the 100-meter dash, right? It's so amazing because it'll be like, so close, a few hundredths of a second between, the gold medal winner, right? So he does this thing. He like turns to the side and he's like, gold, silver, bronze, right? So it'd be like, best guy in the world, never heard of him. Right? And it's like that, right? Or in the World Cup, sometimes, there was a shot, it just hit the crossbar, then they lose, right? And then that's so important, right? Best guy in the world, never heard of him. Like, hundreds of a second. Hmm. So many years ago, I think maybe even in the intro course, one intro course I took, the teacher was kind of saying how, you know, Buddhism is the one that helps us to be like a kind of happy number two, right? But hey, really, we should be happy. I mean, can you imagine even like making it into Wimbledon tournament, being number 64? Like that means probably, right, 7 billion people in the world, 64 make it into. So it means you take any random, let's say even 10 million people in the world, you'd probably be the best tennis player in that group, right? Right? And anyway, so anyway, this is the one that it speaks to me in my whatever my life, right? Mm. So the suffering of not getting what you want. So what are you guys, what are your ones, right? And think about this. We're gonna meditate in a little bit. Um, so remember, wisdom arising from hearing, you hear, but then you contemplate. Say, how does this apply to my life? Oh yes, Oh, I really tried. I really tried to get that job, get the promotion, get that girl, get the recognition, whatever. Despite my best efforts. Okay, sometimes, yeah, you mess up, but sometimes you really did your best. It didn't happen. Mm. Mm. So, yeah, suffering of the five appropriated aggregates. Now, next slide. This is the big one. This is tricky. This is some terminology. Okay. So, what are aggregates? What does it mean that they're appropriated, and why are there five of them? Right. So aggregates, right? Skanda in badly pronounced Sanskrit. So these just form the psychophysical constituents of a person. So we have the form aggregate, feeling aggregate, um, like discrimination aggregate. Yeah. So here we should probably mention. So feeling aggregate is not like I'm feeling good today, but it is said that with every sort of mind, there's a feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral with it, right? So actually, some of you might have done the Vipassana retreat in the Goenka tradition. And at one point, you do this kind of scanning the body for sensations. If you're mm, quite aware, you'll notice that there's maybe some feelings always associated with feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And one thing they try to do in that tradition, you maintain this mind of equanimity, means not sort of clinging, grasping onto the pleasant, not having aversion to the unpleasant. Anyway, that's the feeling that we're talking about. And then discrimination, it's not mm, like race discrimination, something like this, but it's more in the sense of um, the faculty of mind that just determines that this is whatever. So, this cup is white. This is green, be able to distinguish. So those are what they call kind of more terminology, omnipresent mental factors. So they kind of operate with all kind of minds. So then we have the uh, consciousness aggregate. So here there's 6 of them, the 5 sense consciousnesses and the mental consciousness. So the 5 sense consciousnesses, they sort of depend on their particular objects. So the eye consciousness, it sees forms, it depends on a form, appearing to the eye. Ear consciousness depends on sounds, so forth. But the mental consciousness, the one we most use, right, is kind of conceptual thought. So even though we're here, we can kind of imagine our home that we grew up in. We can imagine the car that we drove here in or whatever, right? And it doesn't need that car being here. We can just sort of think about it, right? So anyway, that's the mental consciousness. And then there's the what do they call it? Compositional factors aggregate. Yeah. Duce. And this is a kind of catch-all. For everything else that's not included in the other four aggregates, that is still um, a functioning thing. So our karma, that's most important, that belongs in that category. So in any case, in a more maybe easier way to think about this, then the body and mind, right? And then they differentiate in other kind of categories like that. But even in ancient India, there was talk of the five skandha. So then when Buddhists started to talk about the person, they use that same kind of terminology, so we could speak the same language, kind of thing. So now that's what the aggregates are, and there's five. Now appropriated. So we have, right, the appropriation committee or something like this, right? Or maybe the government could appropriate your property, means take on, right? Take, use. So right now, our body and mind, they're kind of taken on by ourselves while we take birth in samsara, right? So we take on um, this body and mind. So sometimes you'll see zakche nyelengi pumpo, right? So nyelengi pumpo, yeah. Pumpo is aggregates, nyelen is appropriated, and zakche is like contaminated. So what is contaminated about it? Well, since they are taken on through the karma and afflictions by beings in samsara, that's why we get these aggregates, right? Then they're contaminated. And then since they're contaminated, then yeah, it could be better. And that's why we are bound to experience these kind of unwanted, without our control, all the rest of the suffering. So to put it in another way, why do we get sick? We have the type of body that's subject to getting sick. Why do we get hungry? We have the type of body that's subject to getting hungry, and so forth, right? So this next point, there being in the nature of suffering, has five contemplations. So the vessels for future suffering, in the sense that since we have this body that is subject to old age and sickness and so forth, though we might not be sick now, then we have everything that we need. We have a healthy body. That's all we need to have a sick body later, right? And then suffering based on what presently exists, right? So what presently exists is, this body and mind. And even now, we can experience something unpleasant. It's not that we have to wait for some future suffering. Even this moment is unsatisfactory, right? Well, hopefully not too bad. And then these three actually are the three types of suffering that we're going to also talk about. Maybe, yeah, it's going to be echoed on the very next slide, but we'll just talk about it here. Suffering of pain. This is what I said earlier about the translation of dungel or dukkha as suffering being a little bit problematic. Because suffering of pain, that's not what we think about, right? Toothache, knee pain, even mental anguish of being dumped or whatnot. Then the suffering of change. So, the the analogy they often give in texts is that, when someone has been sitting and you sit down for too long and you have, pain in the back, the knees, so forth, right? So then you get up, you walk around. Whew, okay, that feels better. But then you walk more and more, and then you get tired from that. Then you want to sit down again. Then you sit down, and then after some time, you want to get up, right? So neither the sitting nor the walking is true happiness, right? When we've been sitting too long and we stand up, the relief of the pain of sitting is exchanged for the pain of standing. And net, you're better off. So we then label that, we then kind of impute upon that, I feel better. That's pleasant. But actually, what we've done is we've just exchanged a very gross type of suffering that's big when we're sitting too long. And then at the beginning of when we stand, the pain of standing has started, but it's too subtle to kind of see. So in my opinion, many people, I'm not sure if they just kind of think about this analogy too much, but many people, they say, oh, what is the suffering of change? It's when you then start to walk too long and then the walking is painful, right? But it's not that. When the walking is actually painful, that's the suffering of pain. That's the first step. That very first moment when you get up, it feels pleasant. Ah, so nice, right? That's actually the suffering of change. So sometimes in the text, you'll see it as like contaminated samsaric pleasure. That's the suffering of change. This is why I'm saying maybe suffering is not a good word, right? It just means the unsatisfactory nature of it. The great Indian master Aryadeva, he says that like our pleasant experiences, we see them turn into experiences of suffering, but the experiences of suffering, they don't flip to pleasure. So anyway, this is more like the proof of the that contaminated experience of happiness or pleasure being sort of unsatisfactory. Something's problematic about it. Because if it were truly happiness, then the more of it you got, the better. Right? Now, what we've done, a lot of kind of the modern age, modern progress, you can say, is we've become very good at sort of exchanging out our various sufferings of change, right? And like anything from our diet, right? We now have various substitutes for sugar, right? We see the problematic effects of eating too much sugar. So, but we still want our things to taste good. So we, make these other substitutes and whatnot. But it's all in the nature of samsara, it's all unsatisfactory. Means could be better. Then vessels for the suffering of conditionality. So maybe, what that means essentially is, you see, we have now this body and mind that's been projected by previous karma and afflictions. We also have not yet abandoned the afflictions. Okay. So every moment, we're also creating the causes. I mean, not every moment, maybe when we're in deep sleep or something, but often, most of the time, we're just creating more karma to be experienced in future samsara rebirth. And we're experiencing the ripening effect of previously accumulated karma. So sometimes you'll see that translated as all-pervasive compounded suffering, kappa duce dungel, right? All-pervasive means wherever you go with samsara, right? From, and within Buddhist cosmology, there's 6 realms of existence. There's hell realms, of course, animals and humans we can see, God realms, whatever you want. So all of them have, if they're born due to karma and afflictions, even the greatest hell realm, well, that will change. Even the highest God realm, well, that will also change. But since it's been projected by previous karma, there is some kind of, karmic force, karmic lifespan that being will have. But after that potency is exhausted, then they'll take rebirth, right? So although there is the concept of hell, it's not like for eternity. It's, until the karma runs out. So all pervasive means anywhere in those 6 realms of existence, there's some unsatisfactory experience or not, or another. Compounded, right? Like compound interest is what we were saying. Constantly creating the cause for more suffering in the future and experiencing the effects of karma we accumulated in the past. All pervasive compounded suffering. So suffering, again, not necessarily pain, but yeah, something not quite perfect. So there's a quotation from the Sangata Sutra. Maybe some of you know the sutra. It's supposedly, extremely beneficial. But there's one little half stanza is saying, those who fear the suffering of hell should not aspire to the God realms. First, why is that? Because God realm, remember, it's still in samsara. So even if you get reborn as a god, so small g god, when that karma runs out, if you're not free from samsara, you'll go, and fall again. This is also the suffering of descending from high to low. Okay. So next slide. So this is what we talked about, but that last bullet point, right? This third one, the suffering of conditionality or all pervasive compounded suffering, that is that's the one that's unique to Buddhists, as His Holiness often says, right? Even, the suffering of pain, animals have a wish to be free of that. And then the suffering of change. So even some, remember I was saying the Buddha, before he attained enlightenment, he was training with other masters, right? And I mentioned he attained those kind of form and formless realm concentrations. So in those states, one is like actually akin to like a deep dreamless sleep, right? It's almost like being in a coma, right? Just blank. right? Just blank. So if we were defining the suffering of change as being contaminated samsaric pleasure, actually, maybe you know, right? When even like when we eat nice food or I don't know, something there, pleasant experience, there's some, mm, especially if we have attachment, there's some like mm, instability, some, it's a little bit disturbing. It's a kind of a little bit, right? This kind of energy, this kind of vibration with it. Whereas at least in um, the deep kind of dreamless sleep, or there's some peace with it. So these yogis, they see, you know, the kind of drawbacks of having to get pleasure, say through food or whatever it is, and they'll aspire to attain these meditative states that are just like, hey, relax. So those yogis, and there's, you know, many in the Hindu tradition, and many even today, I'm sure, are attaining these levels of concentration, but they have the we can say wish to be free from the suffering of change. But this last one, that's unique to Buddhist practitioners. So next slide. So now remember this thought of renunciation. How do we know when we have it? Well, when by having trained in that way. That way is what? That way means to reflect on these various types of suffering. Then when we, you know, think deeply about all this, when there is no arising even for a second of attraction to the perfections of psychic existence, and all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. Hmm? I wonder what that would be like. So, you know, sometimes it happens, right? When we're very hungry, there's this thought like, I'm hungry, I need food, I need food, I need food. It's always kind of there, right? We don't have to think, hey, am I hungry? Do I want a bite to eat? Right? But it's a natural feeling. Maybe the real renunciation is kind of like that. It's like in the background. Namgyo. Huh? Is it like that? Maybe. Okay. You have a question? Yeah. No, 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 no. I don't mean that. I'm okay. So remember, we're talking, how do we know when we have renunciation? And it's saying there's no arising even for a second of attraction to the perfection of cyclic existence, and all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises. Right? So naturally. So right, okay, so this is important. Mm. Sometimes in the text you'll see the we saw this word before, contrived, contrived versus uncontrived. Okay. So what we're about to do, I want to meditate on these points, and I'll guide you through how to do what we call analytic meditation. So in this meditation, right, when we meditate, we really think about, put some effort into it. Maybe we have this sense, oh yeah, samsara, oh, it's so terrible. I want out, right? But when we arise from the meditation and, we go back to the dining hall, we're like, ooh, where's the chocolate, right? So here it's showing, how do we know that we have the uncontrived renunciation? So not just when we put effort through our meditation and our teacher is guiding us and we're reading the text, but all day and night, even when we're not kind of directly putting effort into it, this intention seeking liberation is arising. So this one kind of uncontrived, I thought maybe it's like when we're very hungry and we have this feeling, oh, eat something, right? And we're not wondering, like sometimes, right? I just spent time with my mother. She's so wonderful, taking care of me. Hey, are you hungry? I'm like, am I hungry? Do I want to eat now? You know what? I'll have lunch in an hour, Mom. Thanks. It's not like that. Like we have to think about, determine whether we're hungry or not. It's like we know, and our body's telling us we're hungry. Now, of course, if you have that thought, you can choose to follow it or not. But just this is what that was showing. This kind of natural, uncontrived feeling of hunger. Okay, please. Mm-hmm. Mm. That's right. Yeah, this is a kind of, I'm just trying to give an example because now, full disclosure, I don't have the mind of renunciation, not by any means. But here, when we see this Lama Tsongkhapa explaining what it means, because we have to see for ourselves. When do we know when we have that full-fledged realization? And this thought, all day and night, the intention-seeking liberation arises. So I don't have that experience, but I was thinking, in what is another experience that we can relate to of an uncontrived kind of mind just arising naturally, right? So hunger for food could be one. Um, you know, mm, there's probably others from real life you could think of. Thirsty, sleepy, yeah. You're like, so tired, but you're driving home. You're like just trying to keep your eyes open, but that sleep is overcoming you. You don't have to think, oh, am I tired or not? Many kinds of things. Anyway, the point is that for us, right, the upshot is we need to distinguish between the kind of experiences we mm, we can arise through effort in our meditation and those that are spontaneously arising. Until they're kind of spontaneously arising without effort, then we know we have more training, right? That's the thing. Okay. So, mm, any other questions at this point? All right. So let's do like this. Let's do a meditation, and we can meditate on these faults of samsara. All right. So for some of you, it's going to be a new style of meditation altogether. Now, in general, there's many kinds of meditation, but if you were to categorize into two main kinds, we have what is called a placement meditation. And this is what we mostly think about when we were doing the breath meditation. That was a placement meditation. Why is it called placement? Because we place our mind on one object, try to hold it there without letting our mind wander off. Okay, good. Right? Then we have a what is called the analytic meditation. Okay? So mindfulness of the breath, or in Vipassana, scanning the body for different sensations and so forth. Those are all sort of becoming aware about what is there in the current moment. But there are instances, like for example, here, when we were trying to develop this thought, yearning for liberation, which is an antidote to the thought that views samsara as being a place of happiness, true happiness, that we're trying to then, because we're engaging in the object in a bit mistaken way, we try to use reasoning analysis to arrive at a certain conclusion, right? And then we hold our mind in that conclusion, right? So to kind of overcome the wrong view, we then use reasoning analysis, we arrive at the right view. And then after we arrive at that, we switch back to a more placement meditation, and we place our mind in that conclusion. Okay. So in this way, right, this is another kind of mind training, right, where we will, with anything, the more you do it, you get accustomed, you get familiarized, which, by the way, the Tibetan word for meditation, gom, has that connotation of familiarization, habituation. So with anything right now, we have such a strong habituation to this thought that, there is some true happiness out there in samsara. So to combat that kind of mistaken view, we think about reality in a different way. Okay? But then combining it with the placement meditation at the end of it, we let our mind kind of sink into it, right? So, we use analysis, right? Thinking, maybe using quotations, using examples from our own life experience. And then when we get that little thought like, aha, yes, samsaric life is filled with uncertainty, or, this certain uncertainty is unsatisfactory, or, oh yes, there are many times when I'm separated from the things that I like, right? We have that little aha moment, then notice, okay, where is that sitting in the body? Or do you have a feeling associated with that? And then just let your mind sink in on that feeling. You drop the analysis, you drop the words and concepts, and then you kind of just abide in that conclusion. Okay? You understand? So let's try. So Romy, please go back to maybe 31, slide 31. Uh-huh. 6 types. Ooh. Oh, yeah. So one before. Yeah, that's a 6. So it's a little bit choose your own adventure here. Okay. Now, practically speaking, what you would do is maybe one day you would meditate on one of these types of suffering. But as I said earlier, it's the one that's going to be speaking to you most will vary, right, from person to person here. So let's do, yeah, learning by doing. Okay. Oh, you have any questions? Yeah. Okay. Right. So yeah, let's. Okay. So what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna sort of maybe go through these six, just kind of serially, and then I want you to like choose the one that sort of speaks to you most. Okay. Now, um, in you can do it different ways. So, but I think it's effective, most effective to bring it to your own experience. So you can think of the times in your life when you have been dissatisfied. And remember, in that one, it's talking about after you've achieved something that you thought would bring satisfaction, and then seeing, oh, actually it didn't. Right. So it can be something as maybe trivial as you have the nice meal, and then a few hours later you're hungry again. Or it could be, you spent all this time and energy to whatever. You got the promotion finally, and then whatever. Okay. So then what you would do, thinking, and then aha, yeah. Mm, these this experience in samsara didn't bring the satisfaction I thought it would be. Hold your mind in that conclusion. Okay. Now, after a little while, maybe you get distracted. Maybe it sort of wears off a bit. So you can either like top it up, right, and just think again, or you can go on to another, right. So maybe you had an instance of dissatisfaction in your career, and then maybe you can think of one in your, I don't know, something else, some other aspect of your life, and then do 2, 3, and overall you could just get that. Remember that nice word, disenchantment, right? Getting disenchanted. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's try. Yeah. So even here, when we're going to do the analytic meditation, it's very good to start with what we've been doing, just getting some mental stability by doing breath meditation. So get into a comfortable meditation posture. Now take a few moments to just settle the mind, get some concentration by focusing on the breath. Means the sensations in the body as we breathe in and out. Remember, as we try to have the mind focused on the breath, when other appearances come, try not to engage. Just let them go. Okay, so now to contemplate the general sufferings of samsara. So thinking about, again, and this should be your choice, the suffering of uncertainty connected to impermanence and everything being in constant flux. So no stable, lasting source of happiness. We have the suffering of being dissatisfied, suffering of repeatedly leaving our bodies, the suffering of being conceived over and over again, the suffering of moving from high to low over and over again, and that of having no companions. So whichever of these six sort of resonates with you the most, you can contemplate relating to your own experience, relating to what you might have heard in the teachings. And then when you have that little aha moment, you can hold your mind's attention at that conclusion. And then if the mind wanders, just bring it back. Or you can contemplate another example from your life. You try to let that conclusion, that realization sink deeper and affect you on a more profound level. So now we can switch and try to contemplate another aspect of the suffering nature of samsara. And if you haven't yet, then I think it's good to combine it with this notion of impermanence. That our status, our lives, our relationships are in flux. And so any satisfaction, happiness we derive off of them also will be impermanent in nature and therefore ultimately not reliable. Okay, so gently come out of the meditation. All right. So I understand maybe some of you it's kind of a little bit new method. Be able to kind of understand what we're trying to do. Yeah, good. All right. Our friends on the Zoom. Analytic meditation, we know. Wow. Okay. So good. Are there any questions even concerning the lecture from before? Hello. Okay. Okay. We have 7 minutes. No questions.
I think I have one question, if I may ask.
Yes.
Venerable, I wouldn't mind going over again the all-pervasive compounded suffering. I think I need to hear that again to better understand it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like, to me right now, they're words. And if you ask me to meditate on it, like right now, it's just a concept out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to bring it home, to bring it to my experience, I think is where I might need some help. So I better understand that. The suffering of conditionality.
Mm-hmm. Right. So maybe to put it in just very hopefully simple terms, right? What this means is for all of us who are not yet liberated from samsara, right? Then we're still under the power of the delusions. We're still under the power of karma, right? And so every moment we are either experiencing some kind of, unsatisfactory experience, or it's coming at any time, and we don't know when, right? But it's coming. Okay. And since our mind is under the power of the afflictions, means we haven't abandoned them yet. We also, when we meet with other causes and conditions, those can become gross and manifest, and then we'll accumulate more karma that will then have to experience more suffering again in the future. So it's like samsara breeds more samsara, right? Every moment we're experiencing the ripening of previous karma, and we're creating a cause for more. Why? Because we have still the afflictions. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what I was saying with, contemplating why do we get sick? Well, we have the type of body that's subject to being sick. Or maybe here's a better one. Maybe from my life. Sometimes we hear about our like some friends we know, and then they broke up. Oh no, why'd they break up? Or why'd their relationship end? Right? So why'd their relationship end? Because their relationship started. That's it. Why'd they die? Because they were born. Right. So this is right. I'm sorry. No, I'm not trying to kill your buzz, but this is this is the reality. This is the contemplation we really have to get to get the disenchantment. Otherwise, oh, why'd they break up? Oh yeah, they were incompatible. They grew in different directions. Whatever it is, right? We're kind of more surface level. And then we're like, well, if I'll only next time I'll try to find someone more compatible. Right? Okay, so how's that?
Thank you. That was wonderful. Because I know sometimes karma is a tricky thing to try and just picture and understand that, because you can't always see it. You can just sort of use your imagination or what the teachings say about it, but it's not something that you can always see.
Well, yes. But you see, sometimes we see the effect, and from the effect we can infer the cause, right? Mm, but anyway, yes. I'm glad it helped. So we have Namgyo had a question, and then Jyoti, right? Okay. Yes. Mm. Uh, uh-huh. Right. Right. Okay. So I'm not sure. Rumi, you're typing it in. You could hear him. Mm. So remember, we were saying Lam Tsongkhapa in his biography was told to purify to get the realization of emptiness. So through the realization of emptiness, then we can abandon the afflictions, right? So then the question, well, when we get, practically speaking, when we get practices from our teachers, they tell us to do all this purification. Well, so one, you see, the most urgent thing, right? Most urgent, since we can die at any time, right? We don't know when. Most urgent thing that we have to do is ensure we get a good rebirth in the next life, right? So in terms of what karma is going to ripen at the time of death, the strongest karmas will ripen first. I mean, everything else being equal. So if we can engage in strong purification practice, we can hopefully change our mix of karma to the point where we won't get reborn in lower realms in our next life. Right? But then, so that is the motivation for purification for someone in lower scope, right? I need to avoid getting reborn in the lower realms in my next life, which can happen anytime. Therefore, I'm going to purify. Okay. That sense of urgency. But for someone in another, like medium scope, they're going to say, the fact that I have these negative karma in my mental continua, that's actually preventing me when I study, when I reflect on emptiness. I can't get realizations. Why? Because my mind is so obscured. Therefore, I'm going to do purification. Right? Am I answering your question? That was your question? So for the attainment of liberation, yes, of the two causes of samsara, karma and afflictions, you can't. Okay, even if you could, you can't. But even if you could purify all your negative karma from beginningless time. Well, actually, the other thing is too. Even the good karma that's motivated by the afflictions, that propels a good rebirth within samsara, right? So when we talk about the faults of samsara, it's it's not just the lower realms, right? It's that even the higher realms, well, they're not stable, they're impermanent, and by the way, they're actually not that good, right? I mean, it's relative to rebirth as a cockroach. A human rebirth is good, but still, my back hurts. I didn't win Wimbledon, right? Jyoti, sorry, yeah. Yeah, yeah, you, yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. So I hear what you're saying, but if I understood correctly, what I want you to think about is, see, if we just have the wood there, without giving it that spark, it's not going to burn. So when you now say the samskaras, and later when we get into the 12 links, we'll talk about this, but the samskaras are like the karmic formations, which do lead to rebirth. But depending on what we do in that rebirth, we either get nirvana or more samsara. right? So if we just have wood, yeah, the potential is that if we ignite the wood, we'll get some heat. At the end, it'll be exhausted and we just have ash. But if we just let the wood sit there and not do anything with it, we'll just have wood and maybe it'll get soggy and like this, right? So in the Buddhist view of cause and effect, when we say something leads to something, right? Usually there's many causes and conditions for something. So even like the common example of a seed, yes, a seed can lead to a sprout, but the seed also needs to have moisture, fertilizer, whatever, for it to ripen. Yeah. So when you say the sanskara leads to reincarnation, which leads to nirvana, I would just say, yeah, not necessarily, because hey, we know we've been reincarnating since the beginning of this time. We're still not liberated. That's what we need. Yes. I that's why I'm here. So because of that, then this extra realization needs to happen. Like, hey, wait a minute. I've been reincarnating since the beginning of this time until now. If I want a different outcome in the future, I need to do something different. So part of this is understanding that process and then saying, right now, well, before we came into Dharma or whatever, we weren't thinking, hey, our spiritual practice, that's the answer. We thought, get a better job, get a whatever, nicer physique, nice clothes, whatever, car. We're doing the chiropas, right? We're arranging everything else except not doing the work on our minds. Okay. Well, thank thank you. I might be like, the porter, but anyway, that's very kind to say. Even to have my name in the same sentence with those realized beings is a great honor. Thank you. Oh, so we're a little bit over time. So we have a break now. You have a question? Okay. So why don't we break? And I owe you, yeah, half an hour break. So can we get together at in half an hour? Is that okay? So 4:39, according to this clock. Okay. Thank you. All right.